Let's dive into something that sits right at the crossroads of ancient belief and, well, cutting-edge science. We're talking about a mysterious life force energy called Qi. People have claimed to feel it for thousands of years, but here's the big question. Is it real? And maybe more importantly, can science actually measure it?
So picture this. You're on a TV show, your eyes are closed, and a man, without even touching you, makes a gesture and suddenly you're stumbling backward. Pushed by what exactly? Some people laugh, some are shocked. This quote from someone who experienced it really captures that bizarre, "what is happening to me?" feeling.
So what is going on here, right? Is this just some kind of clever stage trick, playing with our psychology, or are we actually looking at something that science is only just beginning to get a handle on? That's the mystery we're going to unpack today. First, we're going to move away from the TV studio and look at a couple of powerful stories that seem to show this energy at work in a very real, very tangible way. Okay, so our first story takes us all the way to Pokhara, Nepal. A professor who also happens to be a Qi therapy expert runs into a restaurant owner who took a really nasty fall down some stairs. His leg is in a partial cast. The doctors have told him absolutely do not put any weight on it. The guy is in a lot of pain and he definitely can't walk. But what happens next is just wild. Over a series of sessions, just 2 hours total, this man goes from being completely unable to walk to putting weight on his foot, then taking off the cast, and finally walking normally. I mean, that's an incredible turnaround that pretty much threw his original medical diagnosis right out the window. Look, stories like that are powerful, for sure, but they also raise a huge question. Is this just the power of belief, the mind healing the body, or can we actually measure a physical, biological change? To answer that, we have to go from the field to the lab. But first, let's get on the same page. What even is Qi? Well, for centuries, it's been described as this fundamental life force, this energy that flows through and animates every living thing. The idea is simple. When your Qi is flowing freely, you're healthy. When it gets blocked or stagnant, that's when you run into problems. So back on that TV show, they actually tried to run a quick biological test. They took a drop of blood before the Qi was applied, and under the microscope, the cells were all clumped together, moving slowly, a sign of poor circulation. But then, after the treatment, the cells were separated, moving around freely. The difference is pretty stark. The medical experts who were there were, frankly, fascinated. They pointed out that you can't just think your blood cells into moving differently. Things like blood flow and body temperature aren't really under our conscious control. This was a real physiological effect, and they all agreed it needed a much closer scientific look. And that's exactly what happened next. To really put Qi to the test, scientists designed an experiment where human belief, psychology, positive thinking, none of that could possibly be a factor. You know, the biggest hurdle in a study like this is always the placebo effect. Just the act of believing you're getting help can cause real physical changes. So to get around that, the researchers needed subjects that couldn't believe in anything at all. Enter the lab rats. So here's the setup. 2 groups of rats were both injected with a dose of Staphylococcus aureus bacteria that was known to be 100% lethal. Then, one group was just left alone. The other group, though, received 30 minutes of Qi therapy every day from a practitioner who just stood a meter away from their cage. The result for the group that got no treatment was grim, but it was exactly what science predicted. Within 13 days, every single rat in that group was dead from the infection, a 100% mortality rate. And the group that received the Qi therapy, this is where it gets unbelievable. Every single rat survived, a 0% mortality rate. This wasn't psychology. It wasn't a placebo. It was a clear, measurable biological effect. Okay, so the rat study suggests some kind of external energy can have a real biological impact. But that flips the question around. What about the vital energy inside our own bodies? Can we measure that? Well, a totally different line of research using artificial intelligence might have just stumbled onto the answer. Just think about how we diagnose something like dementia right now. It is a grueling, expensive process. We're talking costly brain scans, hours of really stressful mental tests, and sometimes even a painful spinal tap. It's a huge barrier, especially for catching things early. Now, what if you could replace all of that with this? A simple headband you wear for just 3 minutes. That's it. This new approach uses a wearable device to just sit there and quietly read your brain waves. No pain, no stress. So what is this thing even looking for? Well, an AI crunched the numbers on dozens of different brainwave signals and found that, believe it or not, only one of them really mattered. It's called peak frequency. You can think of it as your brain's main operating speed, kind of like the central rhythm that the rest of the orchestra follows. And when they compared the peak frequency of healthy brains to those with dementia, the difference was night and day. Healthy brains hummed along at about 8.9 hertz. That's the alpha range, which we associate with being relaxed but alert. But the dementia group's brains were running much, much slower, down at 5.9 hertz in the theta range, which is linked to drowsiness and lower brain function. Now get this, and this is the really incredible part. Using only that one single number, this measure of the brain's vital energy, you could say, the AI could tell the difference between a healthy patient and a dementia patient with a staggering 97.05% accuracy. That's actually more accurate than when it tried to use all 24 data points at once. So this is where it all comes together in this really fascinating way. On one hand, you have this ancient concept of a vital life force, and on the other, you have a 21st century AI pointing to a single peak frequency as the most important sign of brain vitality. Is it possible they're both describing the same thing? We've gone from this seemingly magical force on a TV show to a controlled experiment with bacteria, all the way to a hard, objective number that can actually predict the health of our brain. This abstract idea of life energy is slowly becoming something we can actually measure and track. And that really makes you wonder if we're standing on the edge of a whole new frontier in medicine. I mean, can you imagine a future where we monitor our body's peak frequency just as easily as we check our blood pressure, where we could manage our own wellness long before symptoms ever show up? And that leaves us with one last big question. If AI could uncover this profound link between our brain's energy and its health, a link that sounds an awful lot like an ancient idea, what other secrets about ourselves are just waiting to be rediscovered when these two worlds, ancient wisdom and artificial intelligence, finally collide?